If you want to stay alive, then ante up. If you want to play it cheap, be on welfare the whole winter. I don't want no volunteers. I don't want no mates. There's too many captains on this island. 1,000 for me by myself. For that you get the head, the tail, the whole damn thing. Here's your look at the new NECA toys. Jaws, Retro Cloth, Shark Battle, Quint. For the first time in the 45-year history of Jaws, NECA is happy to announce their officially licensed 8-inch clothed figure featuring the likeness of Robert Shaw as Sam Quint in the 1975 classic film. The seasoned shark hunter is equipped with screen-accurate accessories and tailored clothing. Collectors can also expect an in-scale companion piece of the great white shark to arrive later this year. Before we get the review started for Sam Quint, the shark hunter from Jaws, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the retro cloth release of him actually stands. I'd like to as well thank the folks over at NECA Toys that provide the sample of retro cloth Quint that we could have a look at in this review. As I said, we're going to take the tape measure right at the very top of his head, stopping it right there. Quint is 8 inches. I would have gone the extent of saying 8.090, but I think that's a little too much. Let's pull it back a little bit and stop with 8. Switching that, though, over to centimeters, Sam Quint is 20.5 or 20.5 centimeters tall. Happy to report that Quint comes with a lot of accessories. We'll look at these individually before we get down to looking at the figure itself. Starting first, he comes with not 1, but 2 cans of lager beer. A nice little touch on NECA's part, as you can see labeled down below. They've taken the time and branded it with their own company name. The cans themselves seem to be molded in silver plastic. Unfortunately, though, especially you'll see more of it with the smashed can, they've applied only a label. The label seems to hold better on obviously the more solid-looking can, but the one that's smashed, the label doesn't seem to apply well enough to it. You can see it's already peeling off of it. I'm going to see if maybe I can take like a clear coat something and just brush over top of it and finish off those edges. I can certainly understand why they would have used a sticker instead of trying to print onto that mechanically. But again, unfortunately, the little stickers I can see are already peeling off, especially this one. This is the worst of the two. He does also come with appropriate hands for holding the beers. One of the things, of course, we can already talk about on the figure. He comes with a whole bunch of swappable hands. Now, these hands, as you can see, they'll vary in gestures. The ones best suited for the beer, for example, is this one right here, as though you'll be putting it into his hand. One thing that unfortunately is a result of that is the label's already peeling. It's going to then force that label even more crinkled there on the side as you're trying to get that around his thumb. You can bring the thumb out just a little bit, but boy, that sticker's having some real worse for wear, unfortunately, as a result of it. It is, again, supposed to fit into his hand. What you can kind of do also as well, just to remedy the problem a little bit, is bring the hands out just a little bit. There we go. There you can see him holding the beer can. Part of me really would have wished that they could have printed that actually onto the can and not relied so much on the label, because again, unfortunately, that label just isn't going to hold up. The more times that you're going to be putting it into his hand, you could probably guess it, the more times that label is going to be peeling off the plastic molding underneath. Suppose we could probably finish off looking at the rest of his hands. So his other 2 bare hands are these ones right here. I say bare because he also comes with gloved hands too. Now, this one has the trigger finger, best suited for the rifle that we're going to be looking at in a second, while this one also looks like it's a beer-holding hand. As I said, there's also gloved versions of those as well. There's this one that comes packaged along with the figure. It's similar to the ones that are currently in the sockets of his forearms, although you can see the grip of it is much smaller to accommodate things like his machete, which I guess could be a segue then to the machete that he also comes included with. This does fit rather nicely into his hand. If you do have some struggle getting it into his hand, by the way, you can always go the route of heating this up, either submerging the hand in hot water, or you could also just take a hairdryer. You don't have to necessarily make that noise while you're doing this. Now, I have already heated the hand earlier prior to shooting this review. It seems like the plastic has probably started now bending back into the way it was originally. Probably going to have to heat that again. But you can see it holds fine and good, the machete that he comes included with as well. The machete is very different than the traditional Jason Voorhees machete, which I guess is the only other figure correct me if I'm wrong, that NECA is released and that comes included with a machete. There's probably other ones that are out there as well. But it's a nice looking machete. Let's actually, you know what? I feel like I'm not doing a proper service to this. Let's take this back out of his hand. Like I said, a very tight fit. There's the machete. There you can see fully. I do like that it's got weared away edges on the outer end of the handle there, so it looks like it's an old handle. The blade as well has been nicely painted in a dark gunmetal silver. A very broad-edged blade as well. And like I said, we've already looked at the hands that can hold the blade. To put that then aside, he also comes included with a baseball bat. Slightly different looking baseball bat in the sense that the end of it is flat, and usually when you see baseball bats they tend to be rounded, but the one that he actually has is flat on the end. It's got some really nice grain work done to it. The combination of the lighter, it's almost like an off cream color, and then you've got the staining, those little lines of grain that have been done in a darker brown. Boy, does that ever look really nice. Quint also comes included with, of course, a couple of guns. We'll look at actually this one here first. He comes included with a harpoon gun. Again, the attention to detail there on the grain. Both the handle, a little further up on there as well. Very nicely painted, I must say. Of course, the rest of it is all silver, but by saying it just all silver, I feel like I'm almost kind of downplaying it. The silver paint that they applied to it is really rather nice. You can even see like there's little bolted areas there on the sides of the gun. Flip it around as you can see it on the other side there as well. The harpoon is not removable, just in case you are curious. It's molded to the rest of the gun. And as we already had looked at, he also comes included with a rifle. The rifle, compared to the staining of the harpoon gun, is much darker. It's almost got like a slight burgundy coloring to it. And the top of it is a much more darker version of that gunmetal gray. It does have also the strapping down below, which is softer plastic. Just always be careful, though, of course, the clips on either side of it. And that can, of course, fit around his shoulder. So if you want to take, like, the figure, for example, and just display him with the rifle like this, then it fits actually pretty good against the shoulder area of his torso. If, of course, that's the way you want to display the figure. NECA gives you 3 different ways to display Quint on your shelf. The stock one that we're seeing right now without any of the headgear on top of his head, and then 2 other things that I'll bring into the review in a second. I'm not sure how many people would likely display their Quint without any headgear, but the very fact that they give you the option available is nice on NECA's part. One of the options certainly available in my go-to, I think, for displaying Quint is the hat. Just seems more classic to have it on Quint's head. You can fit it quite comfortably on top of his head, and very little pressure has to be really applied to it to stay in place. While it wouldn't necessarily hold the figure up by his hat, it seems like it's quite securely in place. You can also, by the way that they've sculpted the head, have the cap facing the opposite way. Though I feel like that's a little out of place for me. Before we actually go ahead and put the bandana on, I just want to draw everyone's attention to the fact that the head doesn't have a sculpt to it that looks like it belongs to something. In other words, it doesn't look like it has to have something on top of his head, because if not for that, the head looks deformed or misshapen. There is one little area here on the side of the head, looks like it's slightly a little bit more contoured in, and I think it has more so to do with the next accessory that we're going to be having a look at, which happens to be his bandana. Fit that on top of his head. It does require a little bit more pressure to put that back down, but there you have Quint with the bandana. I really want to commend the fact that NECA Toys gave you the option of being able to swap in and out the headgear that goes on top of his head. Because ideally, they could have really just permanently sculpted the head sculpt, one with the bandana, and released another figure down the road, one with the cap. As a fan of Jaws myself, I would have been eager to pick up more than one version of Quint, but the very idea that they gave you 2 options, or 3 technically 3 options if you wanted to remove all the headgear, but the very idea that you'd be able to change this for yourself without having to then double dip and release the figure yet again. Very, very happy the fact that NECA did do that. Now, while it does look good with him, certainly with the bandana, I feel for the more classic look of Quint, especially for my own personal collection, is to remove it and to replace him with the cap. That's so more classic for me. Now that we've talked certainly about his headgear, well, I obviously spent a lot of time talking about the portrait here. I feel there's quite an uncanny likeness to the late actor Robert Shaw, who of course played Quint in the classic film. Not only is the sculpt really good, but the paint is also quite good as well. I would say improvements have been made, even if you go back to the Herbert West that we got before, where the paint came across a little on the muddier side. The paint on Shaw here is so very clean, to the point even where the eyes, when you're looking at them, not only is there a lot of life in those eyes, but there's no muddy paint around there at all. The paint applied to this guy is super clean. Well, of course, like in the movie, he's got the very large pork chop sideburns there on the side, and the very notable mustache that he also has in the film. As we get a little bit further away from the head sculpt and examining the rest of the figure's body, of course, he's got his jacket on there with the patch of Quint along the top here. These are pockets, though they're not real serviceable pockets. They're only just stitched in there to give you the idea that they're pockets. He does have a couple of snapped buttons down the sides there as well. They don't actually interlock and match up with anything on the other side, so they're only there for show. You can open up the jacket, and on the inside is his blue shirt. And then from there as well, not that this would be a part that you'd be seeing on the figure, but you can technically un-Velcro the front of the jacket, the front of the shirt, revealing a quite muscular-looking body of Quint underneath it. The only reason why I'm doing this in this review is not to show his bare chest, but more to drive home the fact that it seems to be using the brand new retrocloth bodies. You'll see more of that when we get down to the ankles of the figure. For the purpose of decency, let's go ahead and Velcro that back up. There we go. Getting the figure out of the packaging, the jacket seemed a little tight to his body. So what I did do actually was just kind of pull it out away from his joints, especially the areas around his torso, just to make that a little bit more baggier. It is really fitted around his arms, not to the point where I feel like it's too skin tight. Again, you could kind of go in there and just pull this away, pull the material away from his joints, just to kind of free that up a little bit. I might spend a little bit of time doing that maybe after this review. The tailoring, though, on the jacket is really quite nice. He's even got actually the tear there on his elbow area. A nice little touch there also on NECA's part. Of course, as we get a little bit further down on the figure, we've got the gloved hands. Now, if you wanted to swap these out with his regular bare hands, then all you really have to do is just take the hand. Personally for me, I'm going to probably keep these gloved hands in, but only for the sake of this review, so you guys can see. You can take then the bare hands and snap those into the sockets. Guess probably makes some sense. Probably do the exact same thing on the other side as well. So we'll go ahead and take again this hand off, and we'll replace it with this hand here. Might just end up keeping that maybe for final looks. And that's what he looks like. There you go. That's what he looks like with the bare hands. Getting a little bit further down on the figure, of course, he's got black slacks here. And it then allows me the chance to lift up the cuffs, the bottoms of the pants, to show you guys not only his shoes, but also to show you the fact that they're using the new articulation. Oh, I love the fact that these have ankle pivots. Now, the original, why I say that, with such excitement actually, is the fact that the original retrocloth figures weren't able to do this. You weren't able to ankle pivot them. So sometimes the older released figures tend to have their feet slightly on an angle, and you could never really get them leveled and flat. Because they do also have now ankle pivots on these newer released figures, it means that you can actually get Quint here nice, flat, and leveled on your shelf. Let's have a look at the articulation now on Quint. His head is on a ball joint, so because of that, of course, you can rotate it all the way around. But one last thing I actually just want to mention about his head sculpt, it's more so the neck than anything else. Even though this seems to be unpainted, it is pretty close, actually, to the paint that they used for the face. Sometimes when we have looked at retrocloth figures before, the face paint doesn't always jive with the rest of the neck. But I feel like in a case like this for Quint, the colors are pretty close. Anyways, the head does, like I said, move up and down, back and forth. And yeah, you can rotate it all the way around as well. For his arms, the arms hinge out. You can also bring them forward and back. And there doesn't seem to be much restrictions really when it comes to material tight against his joints. In fact, actually, I can move his arms fine and good, to the point where I can pull off a 90-degree angle bend. There's still, again, that swivel in the bicep. He has a single hinge. I believe it's only a single hinge in his elbow. And then he also has the articulation in the hands, whatever hands, of course, you decide to display him with. His upper torso is on a ball joint. As for the legs split out. A little on the tighter side, but I don't think it's the material itself. It's more the joint that's actually underneath the pants. You move the legs forward and back. He has a swivel at the top of the thigh. He has, if I can find it, sometimes it does involve you having to lift the leg up so you can actually find the joint. Just want to make sure you got it going the right way. He does have the bend at the knee. And of course, he does have that ankle pivot. Love the fact that not only can you hinge them up this way, like traditional retrocloth figures could do before, but you can also ankle pivot. Love the fact that they're using ankle pivots on these figures. Quint is a nice looking figure and a prelude, also something I stated at the beginning of this review. NECA apparently is going to be doing a companion piece of Bruce the shark that's going to go along with Quint. I mean, judging just by the fact that this is an 8-inch tall figure, and if they are going to be scaling a Bruce to the same scale as Quint, you can imagine then how big that shark is going to be. I just hope that it's going to be a shark that they're going to finish off. As toy companies certainly go when it comes to budgets or just time constraints or even just the losing of licenses, we have been teased by the idea that we are going to be getting Bruce the Shark, and I hope that NECA Toys can follow through with that, because I really would love the idea of being able to have Quint displayed along with the shark. How cool would that ever be? So now that we have this 8-inch retrocloth Quint from the Jaws film, fantastic looking figure by the way, and we've been teased the idea that we're going to be getting an in-scale to Quint companion shark, does this mean, and I'm just talking aloud here, that we're going to be getting at some point, not even a full boat, but like a half boat diorama set that we can then display Quint fighting the shark in his last few breaths? Oh, I hope so. If that's not the case, I think I still have a boat that I modeled many years ago. It's still sitting in the garage. It's a little wooden boat, although judging by the size of Quint and then kind of just calculating the size of the shark in my head, we're going to need a bigger boat. What a fantastic release of Quint, though. And I'm just not only saying this from the fact that I loved Jaws growing up as a kid, but it could be one of the better retrocloth figures that we've gotten from NECA Toys. Certainly also appreciated the fact that when it came to Quint's head sculpt, they didn't just decide to release two separate figures with two unique head sculpts, one with the bandana, one with the cap. I mean, as a Jaws fan myself, I would have still been quick to pick up both versions of Quint, but I'm happy to see that NECA Toys didn't do that. Instead, they pack everything together with this release of Quint, that if you want to decide to display him with the bandana, as he is at the very end of the movie, or if you want to display him with the cap, my preferred look of the two, you can do that. And even if you want to remove both those things and leave them off, his head looks finished from all sides. It doesn't look like it has to have a hat on top of his head, which is sometimes the problems when you have a figure that's supposed to have a hat on his head. You take the hat off, it kind of looks like he's got a squished little noggin, but not the case here with Quint. He's a nice looking figure, again, replicating the likeness of the late actor Robert Shaw. What a great looking figure. A big thank you again to the folks over at NECA Toys. Half boat diorama. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Have you picked up Robert Shaw, or of course Quint from the movie? Have you picked him up for yourself? If so, let me know down below in the comments section. And how on board would you be to get an in-scale version of this shark? I think it's a full scale too. Well, not full scale that takes up the entire size of your house, but scaled at least to Shaw. They have teased a fully designed shark. I'm going to have to find a bigger place I'm going to have to move. I'm going to have to move. That's what's going to have to happen. I'm going to have to move to find a room big enough to house all this cool stuff that's coming our way. Again, lots of stuff coming your way, guys. Speaking of a segue like that, make sure if you are new to this channel, enjoying all the content you're seeing, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and that, yes, you're making sure you're coming back to this channel Monday to Friday. Because not only are we going to be looking at more NECA releases, but there's a lot of other reviews also coming your way. So make sure you keep your Jaws peepers peeled. Those blackest eyes, like doll's eyes. Lots of stuff coming your way, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.